So we'll blow the man up and we'll blow the man down.
Blow the man down.
And we'll blow him away into Liverpool town.
Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time.
All right, so here we are with Clara. Okay, so Clara, what are you researching?
I am researching the diet on board 15th to 17th century shipwrecks. So looking at the faunal and fish remains found on board the shipwrecks.
Nice, all right. And why did you pick this particular research?
Well, before maritime archaeology, I have a background in osteoarchaeology, and I am particularly interested in faunal remains and what they say about people. I do human bones as well, but I think that animal remains give you a lot more information on a population in general, and can be a lot more specific on what they ate, how they ate it, where, what, and yeah, that gives you a lot of insight into people's daily lives.
Can you give us some background for the basis of your research?
Right, so there hasn't been much research done at all on the diet of people on board those vessels, whether much before or medieval period or even present. It's kind of a field that hasn't been looked at. A lot of people didn't think animal bones were important when they started excavating shipwrecks earlier on, so there isn't a great record. But now, everything from a shipwreck during excavation is recorded very carefully. And so we do get, when we're lucky, animal bones that are pretty well preserved. So that can give us pretty good information. There has been a few people that have looked at this subject, but quite briefly, and asking for further research to be done on the topic, so that's where I come in.
Thanks. What do you hope to accomplish or find with your research?
Well, I hope to see if there was any difference in between centuries. For instance, from the 15th to the 17th century, we have the Tudor period, which is a huge change in how people lived in Britain. There's a massive inflation, population growth, so loads of wars happen. So there's a big deficit in the state, and money-wise for food to feed all those people on boats and everything. Historically, they say that they make a lot of changes. So we have a lot more of a pig and pork found in vessels, and a lot less chicken, or a lesser variety of species. And I want to see if we can actually see that from the bone assemblage that are found on the shipwrecks. There's also in the 17th century the big exhibition. There's also in the 17th century there's expedition to the Americas, and so vessels are going for 2 months and back. And how do they keep so much food? Do they feed from the animals that are on the American continent that they would have never seen before? All of these questions could be seen in the archaeological record, and that's what I'm about to do.
Okay, great. What is your plan?
Right, so the plan is I have 8 case studies that I will talk about in a second. And the plan was to look at the data from each case studies and compare it. That's said a lot easier than done, because all these case studies come from, they have different data sets, they've been written in different style, they've been written at different times, so they don't give the same indications. And they're all from different, sources. So I have extracts from papers that are concentrating on the animal remains. I have specialist reports which are about the animal and fish bones, which these are very, very good for what I'm doing. I also have the raw data, which is even better. So it's a Excel spreadsheet with all of the bone listed, and then I can do my own analysis on these. And I also have extract from books which mention the bones. And so the tricky part was to find a way to make all this data uniform so that I could compare it. So that was a big challenge, how to make everything look similar in its shape so that I could compare it. But I think I've managed to do so. But yeah, so I have 8 case studies going from the 15th to the 17th century. We have shipwrecks, very well-known one like the Mary Rose, of course. I also have 2 expedition vessels like La Belle or the Sea Venture, which are also quite well-known. But I also have smaller merchantmen from the 15th century, like the Catwater shipwreck. We have also the Newport ship. I have the Swash Channel shipwreck, which is 17th century, and the Aberac, which is also a merchantman from Brittany in France. So they're all mostly from around the Channel. I've tried to stick to British, well, if not British vessels that were around Britain or connected to Britain. So that French vessel that I've wrecked in France, or Iberian ships that I've wrecked in England, and then these English or French vessel that I've found in the Americas. So, yeah.
I'm just curious if they actually fished while doing like the transatlantic.
Well, you can
voyages.
actually see that with the fish remain. I'm not personally really trained in fish remain, but I've tried to. I need the data. I need to look at this data, even if I'm not as comfortable with it, because it does tell you a lot. They did transport a lot of fish, mostly cod, because it could be very easily salted. So they salted the cod, put it in barrels, and you could keep that for months on end. But in the excavation, you also find a lot of fish remain that don't have the same characteristic. Like the cod would have always been beheaded, and it would be kind of a standard size. And then we have fish that isn't from this part of the continent. For instance, in America, we have local fish there that do show cut marks. So it means that the fish was actually fished out of the sea there. There's also a lot of tortoise shells. So they were also eating the tortoise. And from La Belle, they were also hunting bisons there. So yeah, there is quite good evidence.
What have you found in your research so far that really excites you?
So far, that's been quite interesting. I haven't been able to go into much depth yet, but there is the hint that in the French shipwreck from La Hougue, which are 17th century, there was the remains that were found, which were mostly beef and cod. Showed that the beef, for instance, were only the extremities or the head of the animal, which at the time it was written in the official guidelines that you should not have these parts to feed the crew, because there's not much meat in them, it's mostly bone. So it's really interesting to compare with the historical records, and I'm trying to do this with the Mary Rose has been looked at so incredibly well previously, but we can use the same sources to see if there is, if the archaeological record actually does fit in with the historical record. And with the expedition vessel, for instance, we have a great first-hand written not data, but stories from people that were actually on the vessels and that saw the wrecking and that obviously lived by, and they give us indication on how many animals were brought on the ship, if they were alive or not, and so we can really see if, from the historical record, if we can understand the archaeological record, and the other way around, if we don't have the historical record, can we make general assumption with just the animal bones?
Nice, nice. So have you been able to actually examine actual animal bones?
Yes. Yeah, so as I said, there was a lot of different way to get to the data. The reports were mostly what I dealt with. But from the Catwater wreck, which wrecked in Plymouth, so not too far from here, I was actually able to look at the actual remains. The data had been analyzed in the 80s, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to look, and it was actually quite good to do so, because in those 30 years a lot of bones have been missing, and it was good to have a new fresh look to the data. A lot has happened in osteoarchaeology since, so I was able to maybe have extra ideas and have a fresher look on the data.
Nice.
And we'll blow him away into Liverpool town.
Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me time. 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 Give me time to blow the man down.
Nice. This is exciting stuff.
It's fun. I like it.